Good evening, good evening, good evening, good morning to some. Welcome to the East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down podcast. This is your boy PKJ, and we are welcoming you today. We're holding it down here in the Central Time Zone, but we're welcoming the Eastern Time Zone and the Western Time Zone, as well as Mountain Time. So we have both Mid South and the Midwest joining together on tonight. So you don't want to miss this conversation. It is going to be dope. So, tell you what, do me a favor while I got you here. Thank you for joining. If you're joining, um, I want you to, if you're joining, I want you to drop a tag, let us know where you're from, where you're reaching out to us from, where you're joining us from. So, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining. And then also, we want you to share it with anybody that you feel needs it on tonight. Anybody that you know is already up. Anyone that you know is working a late shift. Anyone that you know needs to hear what's being said on tonight. We're going to be talking about conflict resolution, or the lack thereof, and how it affects our community. So make sure you tag and share with anyone that you know is up. I mean, those people that you know are still trolling and scrolling, swiping left. Send it to them. Maybe they're not on Facebook or YouTube. You can copy the link on YouTube. We're on the YouTube channel, East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down Podcast YouTube channel, and we're also here on Facebook on my personal Facebook page, which is Cadrick Jones. Also, we're on the East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down Podcast Facebook page. So you can share it from either of those areas, and we would be excited to have you join us on tonight. So, again, this is going to be a great show. Once you come in, go ahead and talk to us. Let us know you're here. Say good evening. Good evening, Alexis, Reverend Alexis in the building, all the way from Illinois. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us on tonight. Again, once you come into the room, make sure you let us know where you are joining us from. We're here tonight. This is going to be a very dope show. Even if you're not able to catch it live, if you're watching the replay, we welcome you to share it with someone who may be interested in the topic, in the subject matter, or who may, after this show, you may want to reach out to some people that you hadn't talked to in a little while, because it might get just that good. So, Brother Jeremiah Maynard, what's going on all the way from the LV? It's good to have you on, brother. Good to have you on. Again, welcome to the East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down podcast. If I hadn't said it already, my name is PKJ, Prophet Cadrick Jones, and I'm here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we are here tonight, and we're going to have a really, 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 really good discussion on tonight. All right. So, like I say, tag, share with anyone that you think might be interested, and share with those folks that act like they sleep, but they really not sleep. Right. So, listen, I came about a bit of information, and I found out that today was National Hug Day. Isn't that interesting, right? It's National Hug Day. It's June 29th, National Hug Day. Go figure, right? And then I also found out that tomorrow, this would be today for those of you who are watching on the East Coast, if you're watching live, tomorrow is National Handshake Day, June 30th. But you know, even though Donny Hathaway says on this Christmas, shake a hand, we don't do a whole lot of that in our community. That there's a lot of hand slapping folks' hand away. Uh, and there's not lot of embracing. But here on the East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down podcast, we'd like to talk about those things that keeps Black America awake and provide actionable hope to help us rest better. So we're here to discuss those things that some people don't want to talk about, right? And so we're going to talk about today Black conflict. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Black conflict. That's our topic today. This is episode 7 of the East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down podcast. And we're going to talk about Black conflict. And we're going to talk about how we deal with Black conflict in the Black community customarily, traditionally. And is that okay? Is that right? Is that proper? And if it's not proper, how does it affect us? If it is proper, how does it help us to maintain the nucleus of our community? So we're going to be having that conversation, and we're going to get real on tonight. And I have someone that I linked up with. Man, trying to think of how long ago that was. It had to be at least back in uh, 2011. 2011. So almost 10 years ago, I linked up with this brother, and it's like we've been like this ever since, right? Uh, even from a distance, we still connect, we still vibe. He's all the way in Champaign, Illinois. He's originally from Chicago. His name is Terrance L. Thomas, and I should have asked him if he wanted me to give him the preacher, uh, you know, welcome the preacher bio. You know how guest preachers sit back in the cut, and they look all humble while they're giving them the introduction before they come up to preach. But I'm not going to do that tonight because he's on here as a friend and as a brother, and we're not going to be real preaching tonight. We're going to get in the weeds tonight. So I want to welcome again my friend and my brother, Reverend Terrance L. Thomas. He is the pastor of the Bethel AME Church of Champaign, Illinois. So welcome, Terrance. So glad to have you, brother. How you
Thank
doing?
you. I'm gonna go ahead and get out the way. Thank you, Pastor. We can go now. We can go be real. Joking. The only person that keep me up this late, man. But when you asked, I had to do it. It has been 2011. It didn't seem like it's been almost 11 years.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
found me over
11.
there on Cross Street and bring me to church and man, it's been a
Yeah,
journey. I think you one of the few people left who seen me before ministry, during the seminary journey, and then afterwards. So you've been through all
yeah.
the phases. So
Good deal, man. It's been my pleasure. It's been my joy to be a part of the life. I'm honored to be a part of that journey. And when I traveled to Chicago on my job. We hooked up. You came all the way from one side of town to another, picked me up, take me to this vegan spot, first vegan restaurant I ever been to. And so man, I've enjoyed the journey. It's been a blessing to be a part of your journey and seeing you flourish and seeing you grow. I am just godly proud of you and just seeing everything that you've accomplished, even against the flow of all of the adversity and pressure you've been up against in these last 9 years. And so, man, I'm just happy to be a part of your life and happy that you decided to join me here tonight. I know we both over 40. And so we like to go to bed at what, 8:30, eight
Man,
forty five.
now I will stay up. I'm a gamer, so a good Xbox
Okay.
game will keep me up. But by and large, I'm getting ready to wind down. My son say I sleep like this in the chair now, so I'm at that stage where I'm falling asleep in the chair. But I'm glad to be here, man. I'm glad to be here, and I thank you. You've always been a rider for me. You've always been my brother. Uh, I don't make a life decision without talking to you, so I appreciate you, Godly. I appreciate you being my pastor, my big brother in the ministry, a black man I can talk to, somebody I cite as an example of one that's healthy, done the work, uh, loves his wife, like all of that. So I'm glad to be here, man.
Yeah. Cool, cool. So speaking of your seminary journey, so what was it that made you choose? Because I know right now you're in the middle of trying to decide whether you're going to go get your PhD or your DMin.
Mhm.
What was it that kind of gave you the direction? Why did you decide to take the seminary route and take the route that you actually took going to seminary?
Well, I mean, so when I left Little Rock, I think you remember, uh, it was in the middle of I just got laid off from Philander Smith. We built the social justice initiative over there. Me, Dr. Jones, Dr. Hutchins, Attorney Liz, um, and that was the end of the journey. And one of the things that was said to me by you, by your brother Andre, by Joseph was, you got this justice thing going on, but it's not what it used to be. You're running from God. I remember the altar calls, and I'd be crying like it's something in me. But I also realized that there's so many cats who tried other things and then find God, not because God called them, but because the church is an easy target and an easy mark.
Yeah,
And so I said, if I walked into this calling, I wanted to be properly trained, properly ordained, almost to an obsessive point. But what really drove me to seminary was I had a friend who was going through some crisis, and as one who went through the same crisis, as one who kind of studied it, because my mom was at one point was a psych nurse. People weren't hearing me because I didn't have the appropriate God talk. And so I actually went to seminary to help my friend, but also to be, if you remember, a Christian therapist. That's what a
yeah,
journey was supposed to take me, right? I was supposed to come
right,
out
right,
a Christian therapist because I believe in therapy, but I also believe a lot of therapy sometimes lacks the God language that people need to hear.
right, right.
So we get in the seminary. You wrote me the recommendation letter. I remember you gave me the quiz though to make sure I didn't lose my foundation. And I think you want to test my Bible knowledge. And it was like, what do you know before you go learn something? I still got those quizzes. It's like you had to break down scripture before you wrote the letter. But when I got to seminary, a couple of things happened. One, I ran into an advisor who was like, "You're going to run out of money before you finish this 5-year program." So she was big on mapping out education, Dr. Angela Kauser. And she was like, also, I want you to focus on one thing, this MDiv. And so she was my academic advisor. I called the financial aid people. They like, yeah, bro, you got 3 years worth of money. You're not going to make it through a 5-year program. So actually, out of necessity, and that was probably my last act of faith in seminary, last act without faith in seminary, I left the dual program. Uh,
Mm,
the church I was at the time, I still love them. They're still my family. I won't drop names, but you know what I'm talking about. I didn't know how they took to the seminary journey. And so I began to feel like I needed to do something else. So I was in the library, brother Reverend Branch. He walked up to me. I asked him something about Old Testament class. He said, let's go have a beer. First clergy I ever heard say, let's go have a beer. Like me and you ate chicken, but we ain't never had a beer. So he's like, let's go have a beer. And so we go have a beer. We get to talking about the AME Church. Well, as a Black studies scholar, I have a degree in African American studies. I was familiar with it as a political and cultural institution, but not as a religious institution. All I knew was it was
gotcha.
the bougie Negroes that dress well and spoke with R's and oh yeah, me. Like that's what I knew. And so he invited me to church, and from there, the pastor kind of was like, "Man, you got something." And then in conversation with you, like, "Why are you scared to get ordained, bro? What did you go to school for? What did you do all this for?" And
Yeah,
so I decided to get ordained. But I also learned something in undergrad. And this is for young people who watch. In undergrad, I didn't learn a trade. I didn't learn a vocation. I just went and did all the liberal arts stuff. And then when I graduated, couldn't find a job. I wasn't going to repeat that in seminary. So I learned a vocation in seminary, chaplaincy. And so I won a scholarship. I was the first African American male to win the Heary Scholarship at Garrett. This is a scholarship where they pay your whole year, 45,000. This is a white family, pay your whole year, but you got to work at a hospital. So I worked in North Shore and Evanston and fell in love with chaplaincy. Fell in love with chaplaincy. Then did a unit that was called CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education. Really learned that. Then did two residency, actually a residency and a fellowship, and started the journey to be a CPE supervisor. In the middle of all that, got ordained. Well, fell out with the denomination for a second, got ordained deacon, got my first church. I one day had to tell y'all a story about that because I didn't think they was gonna ever give me a church. I was the last person I thought they was gonna give a church. They gave me a church. I did not burn the church down. I did not mess up the money too bad. Then they called me in and was like, hey, you want to get a promotion? Now, the thing about the promotion is I was with the sister, Reverend Alexis, who was like, man, why don't you ask for a promotion? Like, just talk to him. I think that you think, and that's when we can talk about conflict. She was like, I think you think worse of the situation than what these people are thinking. So you should probably go talk to them, talk to your mentors and find out what they think of you. And so I did. And I went to my mentor and said, man, I want to play for a winning team because they know I use sports analogies. I want to play for a winning team, man. I don't want to go to another last place team and be the best hitter. I want to actually win. Even if I'm the fifth man on the bench, I want to host a championship. And he was like, I think I got something for you. And so he went to the bishop. The bishop called me in. He asked me some questions. He was like, bet I'm ordaining you elder next year. Church is yours. And the rest is history. And so I a couple of things, and I'm gonna wrap it up. My seminary journey was probably, and I've been trying to get that faith back, the one point in my life where I had complete and utter trust in God. I would ride the Purple Line train, 2 hours of class. I had two boys. We were homeless for a season. We struggled with in a roach motel, a rat infested house. Like, we ate ramen noodles. We lived off the gift and graces of others. Like, and that was the one time in my life where I said every morning I woke up, I did not let it break me. To a point, people were like, man, you like living there? And I was like, I don't. I hate it, but I'm believing on the other side of the journey.
Right.
And so I'm on that other side of the journey, but still trying to get that faith back, right? Because sometimes we people of faith, when we get on the other side of the journey, we lose the faith and forget about that which sustained us throughout. And so I am very much appreciative of the journey. I am appreciative of all of it because it's helped me be a better man, a better father, helped me be better in romantic relationships. It helped me be a better friend, and so I'm appreciative of it. So that's how I got here. That's the seminary. I'll tell your listeners, man, I'm a left of center pastor. I know sometimes me and you like, man, bro, but I'm left of center pastor. I'm left of center politically, but I wouldn't trade this journey for the world.
Yeah. You dropped so many nuggets, even in your introduction and your testimony. I particularly like the fact that you pointed out that when you went to seminary, you didn't just prepare yourself for the what I forgot how you said it. You prepare yourself for a vocation, not just get the education. And I think that's something that all African American college students need to understand. When you go to college, you're not just going there to get an education. Prepare yourself for a vocation as well. And so I love that you said that. And then just sharing, being vulnerable and sharing your faith journey, and how you went through that, even as you were preparing for this journey of faith, right? Where you're teaching and you're preaching, and so now you can relate to people that other people may not be able to relate to because you lived it,
Yes.
right? And so I love that. I love that. I love that. And I appreciate that. And that's what I've always appreciated about you, because you've never been one who shied away from transparency and realness. That's one thing that I really love about you. And so again, thank you again, Pastor Terrance, for joining us. So let's get into the subject matter tonight. So again, we're talking about Black conflict, right? So I want to start this way, right? There is a song that comes to mind when I think about conflict, and that song is a song by Lattimore. Um, uh, Pastor James, Dr. James Cone, he in his even though I don't jive with everything in his liberation theology teaching, I do jive with a lot of it, and I understand it, even though it's something that I may not always jive with. But I like the fact that he says that you can find the gospel in the blues, right?
Mhm.
And so there's one song that I want to pull out, and so even though this is not going to be a preachy show, um, but I want to dissect this song. The song is by Lattimore, uh, and the song is "Let's Straighten It Out." Right.
Okay.
So we're talking about Black conflict, and Lattimore, he's talking to his woman, and he's trying to get to the bottom of why they're not clicking, right? And so that song came to me as I started talking about conflict in the Black community. And so I want to pull out some lyrics here, and I want to ask you just to give your take on it. So the first one, I'm going to go directly to it. He says, "Now how in the hell you expect me to understand when I don't even know what's wrong?" So let's talk about that as it relates to Black conflict, right?
So I think Black conflict, it's a couple of things. One, we don't know how to deal with conflict on a basic human level because we've been taught to avoid it. And
Mm-hmm.
so even in the church, right, pastors, preachers, clergy, church members, we ain't supposed to get upset. First time somebody get
Mm-hmm.
upset, uh, I'm sure you experienced this. First time you lose your cool, pastor, you got upset, pastor. Like calling me pastor is gonna stop me from cussing you out. Nah, bro, you violated. You're gonna get this. I tell people all the time, the more you say pastor, the more the cuss out gonna be because you're not changing. So we've been taught to be inauthentic in how to deal with conflict. And so, and I know we talk about this a little later. That's why people avoid it. That's why people run from it. Right. That was the beautiful thing about chaplaincy. It taught me, taught others to walk head first into conflict, head first into it. So that's the first thing. So we don't know what the problem is because we won't talk about the problem. So if you think about in the average Black home, you get mad at your sibling. I don't want to hear all that fighting. I don't care what happens. That's your brother. Hug it out. That's your sister. Give him a kiss. But nah, man, he did something really, really violating to me. She did something offensive, man. We got to address this, but we
Right.
don't do it, right? So
Right.
we stunt emotionally. So then when we get into these interpersonal relationships with friends, families, we step on what I call these emotional landmines. We step on these things.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation is to get over it. I myself have been guilty of that in my life. The
Yeah.
expectation of, all right, I'm past it. Let's get past it. But we don't know how to sit in conflict. And
Yeah.
I'm centering my comments. I don't know who else is watching in the faith because we're both pastors, but especially in the Christian faith, we misapplied a lot of Jesus's teachings to
Mm-hmm.
believe to be peaceful with there's no conflict, and that's
Yeah.
the first problem. I think the second problem is we don't understand the impact this American society, white supremacy, etc., capitalist.
Don't get ahead of the subject.
Okay.
I just want to break down Lattimore's song, right? And how that can apply to Black conflict, because a lot of times people, because we're gonna bring that in just a minute. A lot of times people, um, you mentioned it earlier. There's so much avoidance, and
Hmm.
they expect people to know what's going on when they hadn't communicated what's going on.
You're right.
And it builds that resentment in there, right? And I think that that's something that we have to be mindful of, because sometimes we mad at people that don't even know we mad at them because we ain't said nothing.
We ain't said nothing. We ain't had a conversation. Again, it happened to me recently in something I'm not gonna blast it, but when it came out, the person said, I didn't even know you were still angry about that because you avoided conflict. And I think there are many reasons we avoid conflict, but it's ingrained in us. Don't be argumentative, don't be petty, don't
Mm,
be doing all of these kind of things. So Lattimore's lyric is especially powerful because what he's saying is I can't fix what I don't know. I can't fix what I don't understand.
that's
So
it.
you got to open your mouth. But also the other side of open your mouth is you got to be receptive to hear, which I'm sure we'll talk about
That's
later. So
yeah,
if I tell you you stepped on a landmine or you offended me, you don't get to say, well, that's how you feel. No, of course it's how I feel, but that don't change the offense. And so that's kind of also the other side of that.
yeah. So I wanna hit something. Hit another part of that lyric. He says he said, "Oh, I could tell something just wasn't right when you turned your back and you covered your head. Then you didn't even say good night." Right? So now let's look at that. And we often avoid conflict or don't deal with conflict the right way or stay mad at one another until somebody's dead and gone. Right? They closed their eyes, they went to sleep, and we didn't even get a chance to say anything.
That's real. I lived that.
It's so real.
I
It's
lived that
so
with my
real.
mother. She was angry at my father, who miss them both. They both gone on to glory. But I remember the morning he died, later that
Mm,
afternoon, she sat on the side of the bed and she said, I never got a chance to tell him. Like, even in the midst of her grief, the realization that now she was stuck with it and had to figure out how to release it. She never told him certain things, good, bad, and ugly. Most of it was bad and ugly, but she never talked about that. And so that's also critical. We hold on to things and we create what's called compounded trauma. Because now I got the trauma of the offense,
wow.
but also I got the trauma that I've not been allowed to get reconciliation, recompense, restoration, reparations, whatever reword you want to put there.
Hmm.
And so that also becomes a thing. Uh, you forgive and forget is a false construct. It's misapplied biblical principle. You get to express that. You get to get justice or an attempted justice in harm done. I think the other side of it though is, do we know how to communicate, right?
Hmm.
Because also covering up your head is not always a sign of death, but it is a sign of this is overwhelming. This
Yeah.
is this is over. So when you're scared, you cover your head. When you don't want to talk when you were a kid, you covered your head. It means that
Hmm.
whatever we're going through is too much. So I would say the Lattimore, in terms of conflict, one or two things: give it space. Person's not ready to talk, or how can you make them comfortable so that they can remove the cover and talk to you? Because that's a defense mechanism. Uh, that's a defense mechanism in that I, I I don't know if I can freely say this to you or respond
Wow.
without getting some kind of reaction, which will compound my trauma.
Wow. It's so that I love that you brought in that other side of that, is that we have to be able to create a space that's safe for people to be willing to deal with the conflict. And
Yeah.
sometimes we think that, okay, we just need to talk about this. We need to get this over with. But are you making someone feel safe enough to share what's on
Mhm.
their heart? I love that. I love that. So I like that you brought in your your mother's testimony, and I think that that's one of the things that makes grief so hard. I've been pastoring, I pastored before I retired back in January. I pastored for 21 years, and I saw it over and over and over again that the one who caused the most havoc, caused the most hell, was the most absent. was the one that grieved the most, simply because they did not take the time to get things straight
Mm-hmm.
before that loved one left. And so I like the fact that you brought that out. So talk to us, T. Talk to us about your personal and professional, some of your personal and professional experiences in dealing with conflict resolution or the lack thereof.
Well, I had to learn conflict resolution in a number of areas. One, I grew up in a blended family. My mother had children, my father had children, they married, had three more. So that naturally created conflict, especially in terms of my older brothers who didn't live with us. They would visit. So they would come in with their ways, and I had to watch how my father navigated conflict and change. Uh, I am the father of five children by four women. I mean,
Mm,
so I've had to learn to be Henry Kissinger. I've had to learn to conflict to do conflict resolution. I was recently engaged, and realized how much I didn't know about conflict resolution,
mm,
and how to do that. I pastor, right,
mm.
and you just retired, so and I dare anybody say they know conflict resolution and sit through a church budget meeting. You will see how much you don't know about conflict resolution. Sit through one of the denominational meetings, you'll see how much you don't know about conflict resolution. Uh,
Hey.
I sit as a director of an executive director of a nonprofit, a new nonprofit. Well, sometimes the state don't pay you on time, and you got to
Mm,
calm your staff down. But a lot of my professional training came from the hospital. And so, what do
mm,
I mean by conflict? Mama has stage 5 cancer. She is not going to live. This is the doctor. Then
mm,
you have the super spiritual family member, the blood that we are healed by the blood of the lamb and the stripes. And then you got the practical family member that's like, yeah, I hear all that, but this stage 19 cancer. And
mm.
so they call in a chaplain because they have to determine if they're gonna put mom on hospice, if there's gonna be machines and life support, and I got to come up in the middle.
Wow.
So I got to figure out how to, because everybody got a point. As a
Right.
pastor, I can't sit here and tell you not to believe that the Lord gonna heal your mama, right?
Right.
That's ludicrous. But
Right.
I also know the difference between healing and cure. So healing is a return to wholeness and a return to lack of suffering, but that don't
Hmm.
mean you cured. So your
Right.
sister's right. Like if God ain't fixed this stage 19 cancer by now, it's probably not gonna happen. So I've had to learn how to navigate those two people, because while y'all are bickering, mama's in pain, suffering. Every moment
Right.
y'all bicker, her
Wow.
body aches. Her body aches, or even to the extent of, hey, listen, my baby's in the ICU. I'm to see my baby. His father can see his baby, but he can't bring his girlfriend to see the baby. Well,
Mm,
ma'am, that's not actually his girlfriend. That's his wife, and she's legally nope. So I have to now come in and navigate that. What is it about her? Did she do something to the baby? That's the reason. So I had to walk in and learn and very quickly learn how to navigate that, and to quote scripture to decrease myself, because you come in with your own biases. I'm gonna
wow.
always side with the baby daddy, right? Because I'm a baby. But you learn how to decrease that. And so that's why I push all clergy to take a unit of CPE, work as a chaplain, because you'll learn that conflict resolution. Uh, and to your point, death, the inevitable end of life that happens to us all, right? And so the brother that's been on crack, ain't nobody seen him, he suddenly want to come into the hospital room and start making decisions, and he want to be in the conversation. Don't nobody want to hear what he got to say. How do I resolve that conflict to let him at least be able to speak his mind so he can find some peace, right? We know y'all ain't gonna listen to him, but let the brother have 5 minutes center court so he can get it off his chest.
Wow. So those, and I cannot imagine. Well, yes, I can, because I've seen it and I've been in the middle of it, and it gets rough. It gets rough. And you talked about being in a blended family. You talked about being engaged. You talked about you having five children by four different mothers. So if you don't mind, which one of those have been the most difficult for you to navigate through?
I would probably argue the parenting.
Yeah.
because if there is a one hard conservative streak in my body, it is now. I tell people, do not have children outside of the bounds of marriage and matrimony, because this was definitely intended for two people. But the conflict comes in the fact that, uh, especially if there hasn't been a clean break, or in the case when I was younger, you still dipping back into baby mama. Uh, it creates these boundary issues. It creates these emotional issues, and so you move on, they move on, the other person is stuck. And so the only place you really have power and authority is in the children, right? That's the only place you can flex. And so I'll give you a perfect example, and then I'll address the question. I remember years ago, when me and my oldest son's mom, we split after going around the mulberry bush. In an effort to both control, and we laugh about it to this day, we came up with this crazy rule: you can't date without the other person's permission, and they couldn't be around the children, right? So I'm going to my baby mama talking about, is this okay if I date her, and can she see the kids, right? Laughable and ludicrous. Because we didn't want to deal with the issue of we were separated, right? And so when I broke the covenant, because I realized that, man, this is ludicrous, then it created a conflict. When you have different mothers and who have different foci. So my son Charles, his mama, she all in the crystals and hotep and eating greens, and she all off into the astral plane. So when Charles comes over here with me and I'm very much down to earth, in reality, that creates conflict, because when I raise him that way, then she assumes that I'm bumping against her. So it gets to these kind of parenting lifestyle contentions. You start beefing over money. What is fair participation? Well, he lives with you, right? So how do I put in enough to match that? I'll never be able to put up and match that, because we're not together. So these are the kind of things I would argue that navigating the baby mamas has probably been I love all of my children. I don't hate any of their mothers, but that really has taught me politics and
Right.
getting the heart of the matter. And I don't always get it right. I still get a lot wrong, but it taught me to, like, breathe for a second before you start cussing. Breathe for a second
Right.
before you start. And
I
even myself, are
love
you,
that.
are you being a jerk right now because you and your feelings about something? Like, that was younger me, but I had to ask myself that often, man. What's this really about?
Yeah. And Alexa's question uh draws us to the, because I want to keep her question up, because it's going to bring us to the next section, which is, why is conflict resolution in the Black community, why is it so difficult?
So her question ties into where I was going. Black folks are punished for speaking truth. So you and I were talking about Nat Turner in the beginning. We were talking about Malcolm X. We were talking about radical voices, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer during slavery, Sojourner Truth. The louder you speak, the bolder you speak. This system, this white supremacist system, it crashes down on you with its entire force. All right, you want black folks that don't believe in white supremacy. Cool. Even if you look in the scripture, the louder the prophet, the more the pushback. The
Mm.
bolder the prophet, the more the pushback. So in the Black community, let's just give a historical overview. Saying the wrong thing too loud was the difference between life and death,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
from Adela, Arkansas. So I'm sure you heard stories of somebody that got beat up or lynched just for saying the wrong thing. Somebody thinking his opinion.
Eudora. Yeah.
Mr. Jenkins is the white man crazy. Somebody
Mm.
overheard it, mentioned it to Mr. Jenkins, now 5 dudes at his door. So we were taught as a people to don't only a fool tell your whole mind. And
Mm.
while that is appropriate, right? You don't want to walk in your boss's office and tell him you're stupid SOB. The fact of the matter is, we have been trained to do that. And what started out, and I said this to my church, traditions and cultures that started out protecting us is now killing us. And so we don't want nobody to, we embarrass. So we don't want to know the uncle molesting everybody under the dinner table. So we
Right.
keep that quiet. So we don't communicate. You ain't gonna embarrass this family. And so I think that we're taught that. That's why we haven't been taught to communicate freely. So that's why one of the reasons we struggle with these new age kids, because younger parents let their babies express themselves. I
Mm.
struggle with it. My 23-year-old son and my 19-year-old daughter speak their mind with full, they respectful, but they speak their mind. Hey man, nah, dad, nah. And I giggle because my father would faint if they heard some of the stuff they say, right? Because he didn't allow me to speak my whole mind. My mother
Yeah.
did, but my father, I don't care what you think. I want to hear your opinion. And so it's very much, we were taught that to protect us. And again, another misapplication of Christianity. So don't be haughty. We used to call those people haughty, full of
Mm-hmm.
themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're taught to not, again, because systems, culture teaches us not to communicate openly and effectively, when conflict arises, nobody knows what to do. It's like me trying to put the bookcase together. I can take everything out the box, but I'm all I can do is look at the picture and hope I get it right. And so it's kind of the same thing in our community. We don't know what healthy conflict resolution looks like
Right.
because we've never been allowed to practice it, because we've never been allowed to communicate freely.
Yeah. And that culture that has been built is very unique, because when you look at many African cultures, you will find that many times they don't care what's going on. They don't care what's coming up next. If they're in the middle of conflict, they don't leave until resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll resolve it. But now in this ethos that uh been brought up in, we don't know how to come together and have a conversation and communication and stay in the conversation until each side has been heard and understood, and we've come to a resolve.
Right.
And so I want to ask this question: Is is conflict resolution, because the name can sometimes be deceiving? Is conflict resolution always about us leaving the table with a resolve and an agreement about something?
No, it's not. And that's the other thing. There are some things that are irreconcilable. There are some things that uh that just can't be mended. I think the ability to speak your piece is critical, but oftentimes it goes back to the brother and sister hug that we all had to do. Your brother
Mm-hmm.
eat the last piece of your chicken and you want to choke him, and then somebody older saint in the family hug, that's your brother. Y'all hug it out, and I ain't gonna let y'all leave until y'all hug. But you have denied my feelings. You have
Mm-hmm.
denied my hurt. And in many ways, I'm rewarding this person for offending me. So I think
Wow.
conflict resolution does not always have to end in reconciliation or us coming to an agreement. Conflict resolution can mean we're not going to escalate this. And
Right.
so,
That's good.
me and my brother, the one I used to be very close to, he had a situation. We have not spoken in 2 years.
Mm.
Breaks my heart. Other family want me to call and chase them, but my conflict resolution says I honor your decision not to be in community with me. I just won't escalate the fight, because the more I try to find peace, the more you're going to respond with war. And then we're going to come to a point and do something neither one of us can walk back, say something neither one of us can walk back, do harm. So conflict, the way I'm resolving this conflict is to let you go your way, shake the dust from my feet, and move to the next town. So it's a very biblical construct of conflict.
Yeah.
I think that to invoke a little Bible, we need to follow more of Jesus's model of conflict, and that is Jesus withdrew from the place. He had his debate, he withdrew from the place, he went to the next place. We as Americans and Black Christians, we got this Paulinian thing that we got to win the argument and the convert. And so we got to keep going until we get to a solution. But if you read
Yeah.
scripture, Paul did that and got beat up and thrown out of a town. And so all the time, if you read Acts,
All the time.
all the
Lost
time,
his
Paul
life
was getting beat
almost.
up and people's plotting to kill him because he didn't know how to leave stuff alone. And so
Right.
for us, I would encourage us to follow the Jesus model. It comes a point in this conflict, I'm going to resolve it by saying, all right, man, I'm good. Chuck the deuces.
So, but what about people who might listen to you say that, might hear you say that, and say, "Hey, you just avoiding," and that's not healthy.
So I
How
think
how
there's
do
a
you how do you address that?
I think there's a difference, right? I don't believe in terminating any relationship without a conversation. Unless it's something egregious, like you do something to my children, one of my loved ones, ain't pretty much we got nothing to talk about. Like, we're done. Don't ever contact me again. But I think that there's a difference between saying this is just too much. It's not going to end well. It's going to end in pistols. It's going to end in a fist fight. I don't think we should be in community. That's how I'm resolving it. That's not avoiding it. That's preventing it from getting out of hand. Oftentimes we talk about that's avoiding the conflict. You're avoiding it. And if you think about it in this honest, self-reflective moment, those are people that like to stir up drama because they keep pushing you to have this engagement. Don't avoid it. Just go at them. Don't avoid it. Just don't. So
You
you
gonna
want
talk to me?
you want us fighting in the street? Like, that's what you want to see? Because I'm not
Yeah,
avoiding it. And if I'm avoiding anything, it's escalating into violence and harm. And
yeah,
so I think that there are things that we avoid. So if I said anything to somebody that's harmful and they never, I think you get into avoidance when you start talking about the things we talked about earlier. The cover over their heads, the how Black folks engage each other, the fear of retaliation. I think that's where you find a lot of avoidance. So a child won't ever tell, like in our generation, we avoided conflict with our parents because we knew that it might not go well with us in the land, right? So
yeah.
we did like Abraham and Sarah and Pharaoh. That's my sister. We avoided the conflict instead of saying, like these kids today, Mama, that's offensive. Like, so I think there's
Yeah.
small nuances to it, but largely what I'm talking about is I'm trying not to shoot you, man. So I think we should go our separate ways.
Right,
I'm trying not to
right.
hit you with this brick. We should go our separate ways. I'm trying not to cuss your mom out. We should go our separate ways. Like, before something happens that you can't walk back from.
Yeah. And Kevlin, joining us from Nashville, Tennessee, she said that's not avoidance, that's acceptance.
Right.
It's accepting, that we're not going to get this thing resolved. Right.
Yeah. And real talk, that's how you get into more stuff. I mean,
Right.
it's years ago. Matter of fact, so I'm big on personal testimonies. I call it parallel process. Uh, I get my fourth child by not accepting the situation was over and her not
Mm,
accepting. So we kept trying to let's have this one con. We got to figure this out. And then one night we went somewhere we didn't want to go. Now we got a baby. So when you don't know how to get off the ride, when you don't know when it's over, you stay well past the time you should. And that's when stuff goes left. So if you think about your brother from the block, man, listen, it comes a point where we got to get up out of here, man. It's going to get tense. We got to,
before I let you go, before I let you go, can I
before I
get
let
a
you go,
kiss?
we got to leave about this club before it's before it gets tense. We got to, hey man, let's resolve this. Let's everybody go home because we finna get the fighting out here. And
Who
then
used
we
to sing that song? That song. Lately I've been thinking something's going wrong because you got an attitude.
yeah,
Was that guy?
yeah, I think it was.
Before I let you go.
Before I let you go.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of those.
Yeah, we got it now, man. It's time to let us go, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Teddy P said, I think I better let it go. It's a little
Yeah,
TKO. Let it go. Right. So now that was Black Street. Thank you, Kevin.
Black
It was
Street. Yeah,
Black
there
Street.
was.
Yeah,
Don't
I
want
was
to
trying to
lose you.
remember the name. And thank you, Crystal. I could not remember the name of the group for nothing. So now I want to ask a question. Since we understand that this is where we are, what is the current result of unresolved conflict within the Black community, and where do you see our community heading because of it?
The result is we don't want to feed kids, and we have sit on social media debating if it's the right thing to do to feed 4 kids. Like we literally spent 48 hours. There was half of the Black population thought it was acceptable to leave 3 children hungry because they ain't your responsibility, and that occurs because baby mama and baby daddy never resolved their conflict, right?
Right.
We see the result in the rise in gun violence. I don't know how to articulate my feelings, my words, my emotions. You have violated me. You have made me feel some type of way. So the only recourse I can think of is to end your life. We
Mm,
see it in the rise in drug addictions. We see it in the rise of suicide rates among Black men who have never been taught to love and nurture and be emotional. And so it explodes in rage. It explodes. And so we see it in the rise of domestic violence. And so we see this destruction, both spiritually, emotionally, and physically, of a people because we've not learned to sit at the table. And I'm not talking, I see you got Dr. King over your shoulder. I'm not talking that kind of sit together as brotherhood like that, but we've
Right.
never learned to say, hey, sweetie, this didn't work between us. I love you. I'll always take care of my children. What do you need to help you? What do you need? Hey, man, listen, it makes the other kids feel a kind of way. So what else can we do? Because I'm glad that you do help me and take care of your son. But then when this over, I have 4 kids in the house who hate each other and who are bickering, right? We don't talk about how to resolve conflict. I think though, it's winnable. I think it's turn around for a couple of reasons. One, clergy like us who are intentional about mental health, being transparent, talking
Yeah.
about conflict resolution, willing to do the work. I do think it still largely starts in the church. I think too, though sometimes it goes overboard, I think our education system is a little bit more aware of traumas, triggers, conflict in our young people. So
Yeah.
I think if we can figure out how to coalesce all this, we can have a healing. But as
Right.
it stands, we are a broken people. We are a broken people for a lot of reasons, and how we even the unresolved conflict in ourselves, right? The
Mm.
duality, the double-mindedness, the hey man, do I want to live a righteous life, whatever your faith tradition is, but you want to live a righteous life in Christ Jesus, or I want to be out here for these streets doing any and all every kind of thing. So
Right.
until we figure out how to resolve conflict, we got this unstableness, right? Double-minded.
Mm.
And so I think that that's where we are. Again, I think our community has potential to do better, but it has
Yeah.
to want to do the work. And
Yeah.
sometimes I find our people, this is where we hyper spiritualize everything, right?
Yeah.
So I ain't got no conflict. Somebody, I'm gonna give it over to the Holy Ghost. But
Yeah.
then when she come into the church, you call her a slut, right? You ain't gave
Right.
nothing over to the Holy Ghost. You still mad. Uh,
Yeah.
brothers, I mean, I ain't tripping over that. I don't care. I gave it to God. But then the
Yeah.
first time dude say good morning, you haul off and hit him. So you haven't
Right.
given it to God because you just punched the dude out for saying good morning. So I
Yeah.
think that we also, and this is on us as spiritual leaders. When
Mhm.
folks go into them hyper spiritual modes, and I think you've seen me do this in social media in real life, like bring it back, bro. You ain't
Yeah.
happy your mama died. Stop it. You're not happy. Like you may be glad she's out of pain, but you ain't
Yeah.
dancing in the street, bro. So stop it. Don't you spiritualize this.
Right.
So I tell my
Right.
parishioners that when I think that I get on their nerve when I say it. I was like, so when you're ready to tell me the truth about how you feel and not give me a bunch of church cliches, then I can be your pastor and do what you need, do what I need to do for you. So I
Yeah.
think that falls largely on us. The
Yeah.
last thing is I think that we also have to begin to look at the impact of mental illness in our community. We didn't talk about that growing up. I'm 47. I know you're a couple of years older. We just put uncle in the room with the TV on in the tray, or we put old girl down in the basement. We didn't talk about the impact of mental illness. And so,
Mm.
now that we're learning it, the crazy boy in the neighborhood who used to kick cans and beat people up was autistic. He wasn't a
Mm.
bully; he was autistic. We
Right.
learned that the little girl in class who cried every time somebody called her name was depressed. And so I also
Yeah.
think that we have to begin to factor those things in. So are we getting appropriate mental health? Like, are
Yeah.
we getting appropriate? Do we talk to a therapist? I have a shirt that says it's okay to have a therapist and Jesus. It's okay to talk
Yeah.
to, and my formula is this: unpack it in therapy so you'll know what to take to the altar. Because, like we
That's
just
so
started,
good.
how you know what you.
Oh, rewind that. Rewind that. Say that again.
So my formula is this: people want to take it straight to the altar, take it to the Lord in prayer. You can't do that. Work it out in therapy. Work it out on that therapist's couch. Let
That's
that
so
particular
good.
therapist unpack and tell you about your mama's trigger and all of that. So then you know what to take to the Lord in prayer. So
Man,
when
that's so
you're on the
good.
altar Sunday morning and you say, how can I pray for you? Pastor, I realize that I hate my mama because she blah, 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 blah. Pastor, I realize my brother and then you know how to pray and can stand in agreement
Man,
with,
that's so good.
because a lot of times we right. So I always tell people, man, before they come to me for spiritual advice, I'm gonna ask you one question: did you go to therapy? So when you come to me about your daughter and your conflict, your parent conflict, have you all found a family therapist? Because
Yep.
when you unpack all of this, then I can come in. I can come in with the spirituality. Because if I come in now, I'm covering up this crap on the floor with spiritual Febreze, but it takes away the odor, but the stuff is still on the floor, right? It takes away the odor, but it's still there. So that's that's my formula.
I love that. I love that. Everybody's saying that's good. That's good. That's good. I love that. Unpack it in therapy so you can know what you need to take to the altar. Man, I'm still in that. See, I'm gonna give I'm gonna give you credit for it the first time I say it. so
It's
so
yours,
listen.
man.
So listen. You know, I there's in everything that you said. This is the principle that I got out of that is how we've dealt with conflict resolution. Is that if we find it difficult to deal with, we want to either destroy it or get rid of it
Mm-hmm.
instead of coming in and dialoguing with it and facing it and either saying, okay, I'm not able to do this, or if we're going to do this, let's put the work in. And so both of those require real contemplation, but people find it easier to just try to get rid of it
Mm-hmm.
in the violence, try to get rid of it in just the walking away from it, trying to get rid of it and just trying to pretend that it's not there. And so
Right.
yeah, that's the principle I got from that. So go ahead. You about to say something?
No, I think that's a big part of it, though. I do
Yeah.
think that, and not to take it too far off. I do think there are moments where you have to remove elements from your life and the community. I don't think it's always appropriate to start there. And
Yeah.
so there are times you will have to start there.
Yeah.
So I'll give you know, as I said earlier, hey man, listen, I find out one of my boys has molested my daughter, my son. We're not going to start with why you did that. You know,
Mm-mm.
like what's in your head. That's my biggest struggle with R. Kelly defenders. They want to start with his trauma, but
Mm.
that don't give you license
Right.
to do what you do. I used to
Right.
tell patients that all the time. Grief is not an excuse for bad behavior. Grief is not an excuse. Trauma is not an excuse for inflicting more trauma.
Right.
So I think there are times where it's appropriate to start with the you got to roll up out of here, man. Like, it's
Yeah.
like somebody cussing in your mama house, cussing at your mama. I don't care what you're going through. You got to go up out of here until you get yourself together.
Right. Right.
Most times, though, it's a, hey, man, what are you aware that this is what happened? Or I statements. Hey, man, I experienced that conversation like this, and you allow them a chance to. Now, the Bible, we love to try out the 77, forgive your brother 77. Jesus also gave in other verses some if then clauses, some asterisk
Right.
clauses.
And
If
and
you
and, and
repent,
we yeah,
if
yeah,
you
if they
repent.
repent. And
So,
a lot of people don't like to deal with that subjunctive if.
right.
But that thing is there.
Jesus said that. He also said, listen, before you reconcile with your brother, pay that debt. Make it right. Then leave the gift at the altar. Leave
Exactly.
it there. Then drop it. Then. So I think that the 77 is for folks who are genuinely sorry, who've
Yeah.
left the gift, whatever the gift is, not always monetary, but have done the work. Then you do the work with them. But if you're dealing with unrepentant folks and folks who ain't done the work, then nah. So the former president, I don't know who watching, I don't want to get you in trouble. I know you're in Arkansas. People say all the time, why you don't pray for him? He ain't asked for prayer and he ain't repenting. So I ain't gotta forgive him. Like that's he and he clear. I don't want your forgiveness nor your prayers. So all right, then we hear my dude. So I think that's where it's appropriate. But we do run to the burn it down before we
Mhm.
figure out what it is we're burning down.
And that brings me to the next segment. I've been on this journey since April I stopped cussing, right? And,
I'm trying so hard on your podcast.
yeah.
I see Crystal. I don't want Crystal. Crystal used to get on me. Hey, a brother in Christ. I don't want Crystal yelling at me later. So I'm trying.
You know, I've been on this journey, and I stopped cussing officially in April. I've only cussed one time since then, and the lyrics from Lattimore don't count because I was just repeating the lyrics. But you know, I've only cussed one time since April, and I've been doing really good. But it's still some stuff. You know, notice it says SHTUFF, stuff that makes me want to cuss, right? And so when we talk about conflict in the community, there are two things, and I want you to briefly give me like one or two sentences that come to your mind when I pull these two. Number one, the hater culture.
I think it's BS. I don't believe in the hater culture. I believe this was created by folks who didn't like critique, who didn't like criticism, and so in order to get it off of them for whatever, Puffy was big for this. Puffy didn't want us critiquing his whack hip hop, so then he starts about haters, right? There's no haters, bro. Your music is trash. So whenever people, even in the body of
you say
Christ, when
you
preachers say
say
that,
you say Biggie and Mason were the only one who really made them, huh?
yeah, even in the body of Christ, when I get mad when preachers preach about the hater culture, bruh, ain't
Yeah.
nobody hating on you. Your exegesis is trash. Your sermon is trash. Like you done left the people all wrong. So
You talk about Kevlin's dude. She a Diddy fan.
hey, listen, man, that's trash. That's trash, Diddy, man. You haters, shake off the haters. No, man, your music is whack. You're literally killing the genre. So I don't believe in haters. I think that there's now. I believe that there's harsh criticism. I
Uh-huh.
believe that there's fair. Like I remember you was like, man, how you taking care of yourself, your weight. Like that's a fair critique, bruh. It's a critique I've heard, which is why I'm on that journey now. Now it'd have been something different if you sat at the table like, man, you was a fat mother, too biscuit eating. Now, because you are who you are to me, I'd have been a little mad. I might have cried. I'd have let it ride. But it wasn't harsh. So I think
Right.
that, but haters is, come on, man. If we still using hater in the year of our Lord 2022, whenever people say that to me, I'm like, okay, you just don't want nobody saying nothing to you.
All right.
You
Cool.
just don't want to hear the critique that your sermon, your prophecy was wrong. Like anybody hate.
I didn't fall for you when you lay hands on me. Okay, we're gonna move on. The second one, cutoff culture.
The cutoff culture, also known as cancel culture, I also think it's two things to that. One, ain't nobody ever canceled. As much as we scream cancel R. Kelly, the brother made more money in jail than he did out of jail. So
Did.
he's still making money. His commissary is gonna be nice for the next 30 years. So he gonna have Nestle Crunches and good soap. Um, I don't think we can cancel that, right? I don't think that that's real. Now the cutoff thing again, I think it's cool with a conversation. My biggest pet
Okay.
peeve in life is folks that just stop talking to you, and I used to hate it when I
Yeah.
was dating and stuff like why you couldn't tell me. So I'm texting you, all you see is my responses. So by the fifth text message, I finally asked like, should I stop texting you? Like I've always been like that. Like
Yeah.
unless I absolutely in love and I got to get you back. Like at some point, I think it's I actually think that that's cowardice. So
So
tell
so
the
ghosting,
person,
so ghosting somebody is not the right way to
and I
deal with
think
conflict.
so. I think that I've been wrestling with this ghosting thing because at first I was looking at it like a job. A job ain't got to tell you fired or no explanation. I do so. I think that that's where we get it wrong. So I don't think just to not call, no show, no more. Like I don't care because I have learned that creates problems down the road. You've left doors
Yeah.
open. I
Yeah.
I was firmly against giving notice, but then recent things in my life, couple of things happened where I'm like, okay, you got to start sitting folks down and what they do
Mm-hmm.
with it. And it's a struggle for me. Hear me, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
understanding why the cutoff. Because I used to do the cutoff game. And then I realized it's a form of cowardice. Like you don't want to.
Mm.
That's the conflict avoidance, right? So
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you, hey, listen, I'm a pastor now. I can't do these things in our friendship. Or brothers really struggle with this. Hey, man, I'm married now, so I can't really be talking to you like this. So you just cut the person off, which is okay response. But then when she starts sending cards, letters, and telegrams, and your mate is looking like, why is this broad sending you? Did you tell her that you was getting married? Nah, I just stopped talking to her. So she like, so I'll admit the cutoff game is kind of something I'm growing into. I still struggle with it if it's not done maturely.
Yeah.
But I think that, yeah, like have a conversation. If somebody upset you, hurt your feelings, if you don't not interested, if you want to terminate the friendship for any reason, it's all at will. At least say why and then move on.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, does anyone have any question? We do have a question out here. Anybody else who has a question, you can put it in the chat, and we're gonna post it for Pastor T. So, is ghosting permissible on social media when you're not even communicating with people anymore? Anyway,
she know the answer to that because she unfriended me.
Oh, he blasted.
I love me some Crystal. I love me and I love her family. Crystal ain't been my Facebook
your
friend
brother
in 5
blasted
years.
you, Crystal.
He didn't even say bye. I was looking at something on your page one day. It's like Crystal, she unfriended me. So I think that's cool. Like, especially if you ain't talking. Because if y'all ain't talking, in fairness, we didn't talk like that on Facebook. And so, you know, she just unfriended. And I get it. Like, why are you there? Why are you lurking? And so I think that's permissible. I think, but if you've been talking to somebody someday, like let's say you have a theological disagreement, you unfriending and blocking, like at least had a conversation. At least had a conversation like, hey, listen, I don't think we jiving no more. I need to, I don't want to see it on my timeline.
Yeah, yeah. So because you can unfollow and you can just not comment because there are some things I'm sure that I say that you don't agree with. There's some things that you say that I don't agree with. But it's not time for me to go and shark your post and give this long dissertation about how I don't agree with it.
Right.
You know, because we know where one another stands. We just don't comment. Just keep scrolling.
And while Chris is talking, wait, no, I didn't. What that say right there, y'all? Chris does add friend. Lawrence, your wife out here unfriending folks. That's my sister. She was the first person I met at the church. At the y'all, she was the nicest one. She's a tired of
Oh my goodness! Oh, Chris, he got you. Oh,
but, no, I love her. Funny. She know I love her. She know I love her husband. So.
Oh wow, that's too funny. And when just right, just keep scrolling. You don't have to unfriend them because you don't need to burn the bridges. You know, and you talked about being Paulinian. Paul, you know, he had a hissy fit over John Mark going back to see his mama and didn't want him to go on the missionary journey with him. And then at the end of his life, when his head getting ready to be cut off, now he gonna tell Timothy to bring John Mark with you because he's needful for me. Negro, he was needful for you the whole time, but you couldn't get out of your ego, you know, just to be able to reconcile with him and go do what you need to do.
And think about this, right? It's funny you brought that up. If it wasn't for Barnabas, who kept Mark in the ministry, we wouldn't have the Gospel of Mark, right? We wouldn't have the Gospel of Mark because that's who wrote it. So we wouldn't have the first gospel had somebody not kept Mark close because he got Paul or got upset. And I tell Black Christians, we need to look at Paul, man. I know he's an apostle. I know he's our fave, but Paul was he didn't know how to do conflict resolution. He wrote the first diss track in history, Galatians. Like, Peter, you trash dude. And when I come, like Paul wrote the first diss track. The first diss track in history was Paul. Who writes it about another apostle? And then when I came to see Cephas, old punk behind, I just tried to trash. He wanted to do circumcision, but no, like, and that's the Christian we follow, right? We don't follow the man that's like your brother and watch your words. We follow the one that went around starting fights and riots. Dude walk into another person's religious space and like, y'all God is trash. Like, so this is. And you know I'm not lying.
Now I'm about to be petty now. Look, Alexis said, Lord help, I'll unfriend quickly. I know because you unfriended me.
Right. Let's call these angry sisters out tonight. Let's call them.
We talk about speaking our peace. Now we resolving conflict. I don't know what I said, but she ain't my friend no more on Facebook.
That's horrible.
Oh boy. Oh man. But Crystal say we just put people on blast. Oh wow. And then Crystal say she's sorry, she don't recall, but she gonna
I
go back and
actually
add
so
you.
so to the
you
point, I remember what happened though when
yeah.
we're talking about the LGBTQ issue.
Okay.
And at the
Okay.
time, I was a little less gracious in my approach. I think you talked to me about that. And I don't know if I had an engagement with Lawrence or her. I forget what it was, but the conversation went left. And so, in all seriousness, I'm not upset at Crystal because, as my brother, we sit under the same pastor. This social media thing is creating a conflict. I'm going to separate. I'm going to resolve this by removing myself from your space. So I use it as a joke because Crystal, she obviously forgot. I love her heart. She knows it, so she don't forget. Like, well, how do you unfriend people? Sis, you do it. Like, so I think that it's not as hard. And I think that if you're not engaging, I do believe we got to get. Now, here's the challenge. Facebook was created in drama. If you've ever seen the movie, read the story, it was created in drama. So the seeds of it spiritually is drama. So social media is always going to have drama, right? I think that we can't get away from, because the founder's intention was to be petty. And so if it's in the root, it's in the fruit. But I think that we have to be intentional about how we move in social media. Like, if you're not communicate, I do it every so often. If I ain't talked to you in 5 or 6 years, I'll delete you, because why are you here? If we have too many theological or political disagreements, hey, listen, this ain't the space for us, or I'll unfollow you. So I ain't gotta read it. So I think that's what I was teasing her, but I think that that's the kind of the difference. So as Lawrence, he came to me, man, listen, I'm struggling with post seminary you and some of the things you say, and maybe this ain't, and I respect that. I love you no less, man. Like,
yeah. And so you just and you navigated through it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that you had to have a kumbaya moment. You just knew where one another stood.
But
right?
if I ever, and I will be visiting y'all soon, when I walk back into the church, I'm gonna hug each and every one of their neck, because the personal relationship trends in the social media relationship. So we're not bound by that. They're still my brothers in Christ. They still held my hand at the altar. They still walk with me through some seasons. So I will still love them, and I still love everybody that I went to church with, that the party is still attached to the ministry, even if we're not social media connected, because what we built and how instrumental that was to my growth as a pastor and a reverend is not going to be erased because we disagreed on Facebook.
Right. The Rev says she'll do better. She'll do better. All right, sis. All right. So here it is. I'm about to shut it down. I'm about to do it real quick exercise. We're gonna call it light it up. Right. So what I'm gonna do, T, is I am going to put up uh, a famous black movie, and I want you to talk to me just real quick about the conflict resolution or lack thereof in that movie. Right.
Okay.
So you ready?
Yep.
Best Man.
Best Man. I ain't never seen The Best Man.
You never seen Best Man?
I did not.
Okay. All right, we're gonna skip to that one. Skip that one. Boys in the Hood.
Boys in the Hood, man. Typical 90s movie. Conflict resolution was nobody in there knew how to talk to each other. Nobody in there knew had a wisdom circle. They all were products of trauma. Doughboy and Ricky, the trauma in their house translated to the street. Trey, he trauma, mama, daddy, and then trying to figure out he's a good dude in a rough time. So yeah, that's
all right. Let's see. Black Panther.
The trauma in that movie and conflict in that movie was, what is our responsibility? What is our responsibility? Here we have
McDonald's.
Huh?
That take you back to the McDonald's conversation.
Yeah. So is it our responsibility to help every black person in the world, or Wakanda? though he went about it wrong, Killmonger had an argument. Like, what all could you have stopped in the flow of history that with what we had? Now, where T'Challa was right, if you're an MCU fan, we saw irresponsible white people who would have destroyed the world if they would have got their hands on the vibranium.
Right.
So it's, so they both had a point, but it ties into where does responsibility and obligation begin and end.
Yeah. All right. Color Purple.
That's sexism, classism, racism, all intertwined. What happens when generations clash? What happens when sexual abuse takes place? We gloss over that Mr. went and got that young girl and then abused her for years, physically, emotionally, sexually. We look at the over the racial tension, Miss Sophia and the white lady, and so The Color Purple is an excellent look at different forms of trauma. Even when they talk about the parts of it when they were in the missionary Africa, when the missionaries came, the white colonists came and took over, that created trauma. So it's an all-arounding movie about that.
Yeah. Last one. And this is now. If you tell me you ain't seen this one, I'm gonna be mad at you. I know you're not a fan of the creator, but Why Did I Get Married?
I have seen this.
The table conversation.
So I think that this one is so many points of intersection. You like the emotional abuse between the fat girl and her husband. I think that the couple cheating on each other. As I've never been married, so I've never been able to like fully define it. I just saw it as a bunch of emotionally dishonest people who walked into situations, people who did not know how to have conflict resolution, who did not know how to navigate that. And then of course, grief. I'm curious to see how I look at this movie again in a couple of years, because I saw it, but I'll confess it. My single man mind, everything was leave that Negro, get a divorce, get up from the table. So I don't have the proper language. I know what I want to say. I don't have the language to say how do you navigate a marriage, because I'm told it ain't easy to just get up and walk away from the table. So
So I want to ask a question. At that table, was Mike the protagonist or the antagonist?
I'm trying to remember which one's Mike. Is that the one who's
Mike? No, the bald headed one who everybody didn't like.
So I think Mike
was he the protagonist or the antagonist?
I think it's both. I think you could be both depending on it. I think that Mike, that's the dark skinned bald head guy, right?
Yeah.
With who's Jill Scott was his wife. I think Mike was honest about what he liked, and I think that as she picked up weight, he began to be abusive. I think that where he was trash is how he treated her. Where he wasn't trash is you like what you like, and maybe you should have communicated that better. And so I think also, and that's a topic for married folks, I'm not even gonna delve in that. How important?
But what about how he brought out everybody's secrets?
So we do that though in the Black community, right? When confronted in the corner, I come from a family like that, so I very much resonate like that. So hey man, don't treat that person like that. Matter of fact, in the McDonald's conversation on my page, somebody pulled that. You used to be rowdy. Well, what that got to do with the fact that y'all trash for not feeding kids? Like, so people do that as a defense mechanism to kind of take you off of your high horse, to take you off of your moral position. We see it in interpersonal relationships all the time with them, what I would call half-ass apologies. Excuse me to watching, but that's the best way to put it. I've had to learn that over the years. I'm sorry for what I said, but you forgive me. I'm sorry for what I said, but you made me mad. Or that time you said, that's not an apology. An apology is I'm sorry for what I said because it hurt you. Or when you deflect blame. So we saw growing up, the homie get caught in some mess, he bring you into it. I don't know what that was about. The Cadrick, man, Cadrick be out there too. Like, it's to try to get you in. it's a weird form of ride or die. Like, why you indicting me, man? This ain't gonna take the heat off you.
Right.
Your friend growing up, you're about to get a whooping, or he about to get a whooping, so he tell what you do. And I think it's tied into the misery loves company.
Right. 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 So as we get to the wind down, tell the people how they can get in contact with you. Listen up real carefully, Crystal, so you can know how you can add them back.
So all of these are on Instagram. It's my Facebook, my Instagram, and my Twitter. Let me say this: I gave Cadrick because we kind of talked. These are not my non-clergy handles. I have a handle. You can find me under Reverend Terrance L. Thomas. I give that caveat because on that page I talk about strictly politics and Jesus. So if that's what you want to see, that's what you need to see. Add me over there. This is where I'm gonna talk about culture, my favorite bourbon, movies, etc. You're gonna get the full human me. So I always tell people that. I leave it up to you to decide which what you can hang. The only people that I don't give that choice to is church members. Y'all going over to the Rev Terrance side, but everybody else, this is where you find me, where you see me. Hit me up. I accept all friend requests unless you're a crazy Trump supporter, and I still might accept you because I'm gonna troll you for a little while. So
So what you're saying is TLT has a social media metaverse.
yeah. And I had to create that when I was at Philander because I had to create the two identities because I made the mistake, added a couple of coworkers, even added a student, and next day I can't believe you posted that, and I got tired of hearing that. So I created a professional page where you ain't got to read all that. You can see the banal. When I feel like posting on there, I do, but the jump is over here. That's where you're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, yeah. They are talking about, even Alexis is talking about you because you haven't seen the best man.
She knows this though. Like I'm shocked that she trying to
So
front me. Like I told her
so
that
so that's the next movie night.
I told her I ain't never seen the best man. I told her that.
That's the next movie night. All right. So hey, thank you so much, Reverend Terrance, for joining us tonight, man. It's been a
Oh, this is
pleasure. It's
fun.
been enjoyed this conversation. I hope that people got something out of the conversation. And I hope that we even got some resolve about how to deal with conflict resolution in our various relationships and within our community. So now we're going to go, before we leave, we're going to talk about before you close your eyes. All right. So um, I want to deal with this before you close your eyes. I want to go somewhere, something that's familiar to us. In Psalm 23, the scripture says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over." Now, most people look at this and they shout over this and say, "Oh, God's going to raise me up in front of my enemies." But when you understand a Easternized context in regards to the table, you'll understand that the table was a place of reconciliation. It was a place where people came. It was one of the most intimate places outside of the marriage bed that someone could meet. And so when the scripture says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies," what it's saying is, you bringing me to a table and my enemies are there, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to resolve whatever conflict we had. And that's why it says, "You anoint my head with oil and my cup runs over." So he's saying that really you are anointed to deal with conflict. And so before you close your eyes, watch this. If God can invite everyone to the table by allowing his son to take our place, by taking on the state of enemy, just so we can come to the table to be heard and understood, why are you still beefing? So the close your eyes is this. You've been anointed to resolve conflict, so open up your table. Hashtag God's Lullaby. Thank you for joining us here on East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down. This is Helen Jones' second son and Deborah Michelle's trophy husband saying life is too short to play games, so keep it real. Two fingers to the north. We out. Pow.